Imagine the year is 1832. America is still young, restless, and searching for its identity. Yale University, one of the nation's oldest institutions, is filled with privilege, ambition, and the sons of the country's rising elite. But behind the ivy-covered walls, tension brews. Secret societies are flourishing, each competing for prestige and control of the university's most promising students. At this time, William Huntington Russell, a serious, ambitious young man from a wealthy Connecticut family, is deeply inspired by his time studying in Germany. In Europe, he has witnessed a culture of student secret societies, groups bound together by ritual, brotherhood, and secrecy. These societies weren't just clubs, they were power machines, training grounds for men destined to rule. When Russell returned to Yale, he was dissatisfied. He saw America's future being shaped, but he also saw Yale divided, elitist, and chaotic. And so, alongside another figure, Alphonso Taft, a brilliant law student who would later become U.S. Attorney General and father to a U.S. president, the two conspired to create something new, something different, something secret. They wanted a society that would rise above the petty squabbles of Yale's campus, a society that would bind its members for life, a society that would cultivate leaders, place them into positions of power, and keep them forever loyal, not to Yale, not to the nation, but to each other. Thus, in 1832, the Skull and Bones Society was born. The society would be different from anything else on campus. Its founders borrowed heavily from the European model of ritualistic student groups, but they added something uniquely American – ambition. The members of Skull and Bones were not just seeking brotherhood, they were seeking influence. They were creating a machine that would quietly insert its members into the highest levels of government, business, and intelligence. And it all started with a simple idea. Select 15 of the most influential seniors at Yale every year. 15 young men who were considered the brightest, most ambitious, and socially connected. These men would be chosen, or as the society called it, tapped. The chosen few were brought into the fold with secrecy, rituals, and a promise of power. In exchange for their loyalty, they would become part of something much greater than themselves. They would be reborn into a new identity, one tied to the society forever. By the late 1830s, whispers of Skull and Bones began to spread through Yale's campus. Students spoke of a mysterious group that met in a dark, windowless building known as the Tomb, a society whose members seemed to rise effortlessly into positions of prestige, a society whose initiation rituals were so bizarre that nobody could tell truth from legend. Some mocked it, some feared it, but everyone respected its influence. And so, what began in 1832 as the brainchild of two ambitious young men quickly transformed into one of the most mysterious and powerful secret societies in American history. The Skull and Bones Society was no longer just a campus club. It was the seed of an elite brotherhood that would quietly shape the course of the nation.
Picture the emblem, a grinning human skull, hollow-eyed, with two crossbones beneath it. Below, the cryptic number 322. It's bold, unsettling, and impossible to ignore. Why would a secret society at Yale choose such a dark, almost morbid symbol? The choice of the skull and crossbones was no accident. In the 19th century, this symbol already carried a heavy weight. To sailors, it was the mark of pirates, danger, death, and rebellion. To alchemists and secret societies in Europe, it was a memento mori, a reminder that life is short and death comes for us all. For the members of Skull and Bones, the emblem meant something deeper. It was a way of saying, you are now part of something eternal. Death no longer separated you from your brothers. In fact, death was your initiation into a second life. And then there was the number 322. It is one of the great mysteries of the society. Engraved on their badges, painted inside the tomb, whispered in rumors, 322 became the society's secret code. What does it mean? Some historians suggest it points to the year 322 BC, the death of the Greek orator Demosthenes, a symbol of resistance to tyranny and loyalty to one's ideals. Others claim it refers to the founding date of a German secret society that inspired Russell during his studies abroad. Another theory says it simply marks the society's own beginning, the 32nd year of the 19th century, 1832. But the Bonesmen never explain. For outsiders, it remains a riddle. The name itself, Skull and Bones, has power. It conjures images of tombs, of death, of secret brotherhoods forged in shadow. It intimidates rivals, fascinates conspiracists, and binds its members in silence. From the very beginning, every detail, the name, the symbol, the number, was carefully chosen, not just to stand out, but to create an aura of fear, mystery, and control. The message was clear. If you are part of Skull and Bones, you belong to death and to eternity. You belong to something greater, darker, and more powerful than yourself. And for the rest of Yale, the whispers grew louder. What really happens inside the tomb?
To understand the strange rituals and secrecy of Skull and Bones, we must leave Yale for a moment and cross the ocean back to 19th century Europe. In the early 1830s, William Huntington Russell, one of the Society's founders, studied in Germany. And in that time, German universities were not only centers of scholarship, but also hotbeds of secret student societies. These weren't just drinking clubs. They were organized, ritualistic, and steeped in ancient symbolism. They called them student corps or Burschenschaften, groups that blended fraternity with politics, sometimes even rebellion. Members fought duels with swords to prove their courage, swore lifelong loyalty to one another, and held rituals that mixed the dramatic with the bizarre. Russell was fascinated. Here was a model of brotherhood that went far beyond campus camaraderie. These societies created networks of loyalty and influence that stretched far beyond the university walls. They were breeding grounds for leaders. When Russell returned to Yale, he carried with him this vision. He wanted to transplant that German-style secret society system into American soil, but he also wanted to make it even more exclusive. So where German student groups often recruited broadly, Russell's Skull and Bones would recruit only 15 men each year, just 15 of the best as defined by influence, intellect, wealth, or connections. This selectivity was key. Over time, the small, tightly bound group would weave an invisible web across politics, law, banking, and media. Even the architecture of the Skull and Bones tomb hints at these European roots.
The building, erected later, is designed to resemble an ancient German lodge, austere, windowless, imposing, a fortress of secrecy. It's not hard to see the German influence in the rituals as well. Tales of mock funerals, symbolic death and rebirth, and strange oaths echo the kind of ceremonies Russell witnessed in Europe. He had seen how ritual could forge loyalty stronger than blood. But there was another layer, too, the political side. German student societies often doubled as political movements, pushing for nationalism, unity, or revolution. Skull and Bones would not fight duels or lead uprisings, but it would quietly insert itself into the machinery of American power. The lesson Russell took from Germany was simple. Secrecy plus loyalty equals power. And so, what began as a Yale fraternity became something far more ambitious, an American experiment in elite control, hidden in plain sight. By the time Skull and Bones began tapping members each spring, it was already drawing not just curious stares, but whispers of fear. People sensed that this was not merely a club. It was something imported, something older, something foreign, reshaped for American ambition.
Yale University in the 1830s was not the polished Ivy League institution we picture today. It was rowdy, divided, and ruled by student cliques. But among all the rivalries on campus, none was fiercer than the war between the secret societies. Long before Skull and Bones, Yale had already cultivated a taste for mystery. Students formed exclusive clubs with strange names, debating groups, literary societies, and rival brotherhoods. The most powerful of these was Linonia, which boasted alumni like Nathan Hale. Then came Scroll and Key, another secret society founded in 1842. But Skull and Bones, established in 1832, quickly rose to the top. Why? Because unlike the others, it wasn't just about books, debates, or poetry. It was about power. Each year, the ritual of tapping became a spectacle. On a spring evening, senior Bonesmen would march across the Yale campus, dressed in black, tapping underclassmen on the shoulder, publicly claiming them as the next chosen few. For the tapped, it was the ultimate honor. For those left out, it was humiliation. Almost overnight, Skull and Bones created a two-class system at Yale, those inside the tomb and those shut out forever. The rivalry was intense. Scroll and Key tried to outdo Skull and Bones with its own secret rituals and elite membership. Linonia, once mighty, found itself overshadowed. Every society wanted the best men, the future politicians, judges, bankers, and generals. But Bones had an edge. Its network of alumni. While other societies faded after graduation, Skull and Bones members entered the real world bound by an oath of lifelong loyalty. They hired each other, promoted each other, and protected each other. It didn't take long for Yale students to notice that the path to power often passed through the tomb. Rumors began spreading. Was Skull and Bones secretly controlling Yale itself? Professors were said to favor Bonesmen. Student elections seemed mysteriously tilted in their favor. Even campus newspapers sometimes bent toward Bones' influence. By the late 19th century, Skull and Bones had become more than a student society. It was a shadow government within Yale, one that quietly dictated who rose and who fell. The rivalry only added to the mystique. Outsiders gossiped endlessly about what went on inside the tomb. Was it satanic? Was it political? Was it just drunken theatrics? Nobody knew. And that secrecy gave Skull and Bones the greatest weapon of all, fear. Bones wasn't just another society. It was the society. And its rivals, no matter how grand, would always live in its shadow.
Every secret society has its symbols. Freemasons have their compass and square, the Rosicrucians their rose and cross, For Skull and Bones, it is the skull and crossbones emblem. But beneath it lies something even stranger, the number 322. It appears everywhere, on their crest, inside their tomb, even engraved on jewelry and insignias worn by Bonesmen. Outsiders whisper about it endlessly. Insiders never explain. What does it mean? One theory traces the number to the year 322 BC, the death of the Greek orator Demosthenes, one of Athens' greatest defenders of democracy. His death marked the collapse of Athenian independence, the moment when freedom bowed to tyranny. If this is true, then 322 is not just a date, but a reminder the old order has fallen and a new one must rise. Others claim it connects back to Germany. Russell, after all, studied at the University of Göttingen, where student secret societies thrived. Some historians suspect he borrowed the 322 from a German lodge numbering system. If so, the number might link Skull and Bones to a European underground network that existed long before Yale ever saw it. A darker theory insists it marks the founding year of Skull and Bones itself, the 32nd year of the 19th century, 1832. The extra 2 may signify the start of a new chapter of history, reserved only for Bonesmen. Still others whisper that 322 refers to the society's own internal mythology, that it is the number of a chapter in an ancient book of death, or even a reference to a secret covenant between the living and the dead. Of course, the Bonesmen never clarify. When outsiders ask, they smile, laugh, and shrug, but never answer. The mystery itself is the point. Because symbols are powerful, they do not need to be explained. They work by being enigmatic, intimidating, unforgettable. And 322 has done its job for nearly 2 centuries. Students, professors, journalists, even presidents have wondered about it. Nobody outside the tomb truly knows, but every Bonesman understands its weight. To wear the number 322 is to carry a mark of death, secrecy, and brotherhood. It is a badge that says, "I belong to the inner circle. I am one of the chosen."
On the corner of High Street and Chapel Street in New Haven, Connecticut, stands a building that looks less like a college hall and more like a mausoleum. It has no windows. Its sandstone walls are heavy and bare, unwelcoming to outsiders. Locals call it simply the Tomb. This is the headquarters of Skull and Bones. Built in 1856, the Tomb is the Society's temple, fortress, and prison of secrets. For nearly 2 centuries, no outsider has truly known all that goes on inside. But stories and rare leaks have painted a chilling picture. Step through its iron doors and you are met with dimly lit halls, strange artifacts, and a silence that feels alive. The air is heavy, as if soaked in history. Every wall is decorated with relics, skulls, bones, antlers, swords, flags, and faded portraits of members long dead. There are whispers of specific treasures. Geronimo's skull, stolen from his grave by Bonesmen during World War I. Napoleon's sword, displayed in honor of conquest. Even Hitler's silverware, looted from Europe. Some of these claims may be myth, others are backed by sworn testimony. But inside the tomb, fact and legend blur into one. The tomb is not large, but it is labyrinthine. There are rooms for meetings, ritual chambers, a library of secret manuscripts, and rooms filled with peculiar relics, trophies of history, symbols of power. One chamber, according to leaked descriptions, is laid out like a temple, with altars, candles, and a coffin. The initiation rites take place here. For outsiders, the rumors sound unbelievable. new members lying naked in coffins, confessing their sexual histories to their peers, acting out mock funerals in which they die to their old selves and are reborn as Bonesmen. Stranger still are the nicknames given during initiation. Each new member is stripped of his old identity and given a new one, often bizarre or degrading. Presidents, tycoons, senators – once upon a time, they all sat in that chamber, blindfolded, reciting oaths of loyalty, becoming part of a chain of secrecy. Everything inside the tomb serves a purpose – to intimidate, to unsettle, to bond. By breaking a man down in those halls, Skull and Bones reshapes him into someone new, someone who belongs to the Brotherhood first and to himself second. And outside, students and townspeople walk by, staring at the blank walls, wondering, what really goes on inside? The truth is, only the 15 chosen each year and the thousands who came before them will ever know. The tomb does not reveal its secrets. It keeps them buried.
Imagine being a Yale senior in the 1800s. It's spring. You've been tapped by Skull and Bones, chosen as one of just 15 from the entire class. You know this is the door to a lifetime of privilege and power. But you've also heard the rumors, and tonight those rumors become real. Inside the tomb, the initiation ceremony unfolds like something from another world. Candles flicker against the stone walls. The air smells of incense, dust, and age. The senior members, your future brothers, wear robes, masks, and carry strange relics. The room is filled with skulls, bones, and symbols of death. You are blindfolded. You are led into a chamber, and then the ritual begins. Whispers from those who have broken silence, rare and often anonymous, describe scenes both theatrical and unsettling. First comes the mock death. The initiate lies in a coffin covered with a sheet. He is told he must die to his old self, his name, his identity, his ties to the outside world. In that coffin, he becomes nothing, waiting to be reborn. Then comes the confession. The initiate is asked to reveal his innermost secrets, his deepest shames, often of a sexual nature. Surrounded by his peers, he must confess everything: humiliations, sins, private desires. This is not just hazing. It is a ritual of control. By exposing yourself, you are bound forever. Your secrets are no longer yours alone. Some accounts claim that initiates are made to kiss a skull, symbolizing their bond with death and eternity. Others suggest that bizarre, theatrical reenactments of historical events take place. Napoleon, Satan, even gods of the underworld are invoked in strange role plays. Through it all, the new member is stripped of his individuality. He is given a new Bones name, a nickname, often mocking, that will follow him for life within the society. Presidents, senators, bankers, all were once reduced to characters in this strange ritual theater. Finally, the initiate rises from the coffin. He is no longer an ordinary Yale student. He is reborn as a knight of Eulogia, a brother of the Skull and Bones. The blindfold is removed. He looks around and for the first time sees the secret chamber where generations of America's elite have stood before him. The ceremony ends with an oath of silence and loyalty. From that moment on, he belongs not only to himself, but to the Order. His brother's secrets are his, and his are theirs. They are bound for life through ritual, humiliation, and shared darkness. And when the doors of the tomb close behind him, the outside world can only wonder.
The skull. It is the ultimate symbol of death, of mortality, of the inevitable fate that awaits us all. For most, it is something to fear. But for Skull and Bones, it is an object of reverence, loyalty, and even intimacy. Among the most persistent rumors surrounding the society's initiation is the ritual known as the Kiss of the Skull. During the ceremony, new members are said to be confronted with a human skull, sometimes resting on a pedestal, sometimes cradled by a senior bonesman. The initiate must lean forward and press his lips to it, pledging loyalty to the order and symbolically embracing death itself. Some versions of the story insist that the skull belonged to a famous figure, perhaps Geronimo, the Apache warrior whose remains Prescott Bush allegedly stole from his grave at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Others claim it is simply one of the many skulls lining the tomb's chambers collected over decades of ritual and conquest. The act is shocking, intimate, and unforgettable. To kiss the skull is to accept that your life, your secrets, your very identity no longer belong to you alone. You are bound by death and to those who stand around you in the candlelight. The skull is more than a prop. It is a teacher. It whispers the Latin phrase, memento mori, remember that you must die. For Bonesmen, this is not a warning, but a liberation. By accepting death, they are reborn into a brotherhood that promises immortality through power, legacy, and influence. Of course, official members never admit this ritual exists. Some laugh it off as a joke, a wild myth invented by outsiders. But when you walk past the tomb and imagine the dark rooms inside, lined with relics, it doesn't seem far-fetched. Because whether or not the kiss of the skull literally happens, the symbolism is undeniable. Skull and Bones is obsessed with death, with harnessing it, mocking it, and transforming it into a tool of control. And for every new member, the skull is the first reminder that joining the society is not about college games or student clubs. It is about giving yourself to something older, darker, and eternal.
If the walls of the tomb could speak, what stories would they tell? Perhaps none stranger or more unsettling than the rumors of confessions made in total vulnerability. For decades, whispers have circulated around Yale about the Skull and Bones initiation involving nudity, confessions, and humiliation. According to accounts from former members and daring investigators, at some point during the ceremony, the new initiate is stripped, sometimes literally, sometimes symbolically. In the dim light of the ritual chamber, he is asked to reveal his deepest, darkest secrets. Not trivial ones, but the kinds of confessions that make a man tremble. Often, these confessions are said to be sexual in nature, stories of desires, mistakes, encounters that no one else is supposed to know. One leaked description even claimed that initiates lay naked in coffins while confessing, surrounded by robed bonesmen who listened in silence. Why? Because confession is control. By speaking these truths aloud, the initiate ensures he can never turn against the Brotherhood. His most vulnerable moments are now shared property, guarded by the Order. Trust is forged, yes, but so is dependence. Some call it hazing, others call it a psychological ritual designed to break down the individual and rebuild him as part of the collective. Either way, the effect is the same. Once you've confessed in the tomb, you can never go back to who you were before. Former Bonesmen rarely discuss this, but hints have slipped through. In a 2001 ABC News interview, both George W. Bush and John Kerry, presidential candidates and Bonesmen, were asked about their time in the society. Both laughed nervously, gave the same line, and refused to answer. It's a secret. That silence only fuels the legend. Did they confess in the tomb? Did their most personal truths become part of the society's hidden archives? Nobody outside knows. But if the rumors are true,
The lesson is chilling. Skull and Bones does not just recruit you, it owns you, body and soul.
Behind the locked doors of the tomb, past the ritual chambers and the echoing halls, lies another kind of mystery, a collection of relics, trophies, and artifacts that have fueled speculation for more than a century. The tomb is said to house a bizarre assortment of objects, each with its own story. Some are mundane, others are so extraordinary that they sound like fiction, until whispers, lawsuits, and historical records suggest otherwise. One of the most infamous is the alleged skull of Geronimo, the great Apache warrior who resisted U.S. forces until his capture in 1886. According to a sworn statement in 2006 by descendants of Geronimo, members of Skull and Bones, including Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush, dug up Geronimo's grave at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in 1918. They allegedly stole his skull, some bones, and even personal items, transporting them back to Yale as a trophy. The Bush family denied it. Yale stayed silent, but a leaked Bones letter from that era seems to describe the theft in detail. To this day, Geronimo's descendants demand the skull's return. Whether it truly sits inside the tomb or not, the story itself has become part of Bones mythology. Another relic said to rest inside is Napoleon's sword, a symbol of conquest and empire. How it got there is uncertain. Some claim it was donated by a wealthy Bonesman. Others whisper it was smuggled back after European travels. There are also rumors of Hitler's silverware looted during World War II by an OSS officer who happened to be a Bonesman. True or not, the idea fits the society's strange obsession with objects tied to power and death. Beyond these famous items, insiders describe rooms full of skulls, skeletons, animal remains, and ritual objects. The tomb is said to feel less like a fraternity house and more like a museum of the macabre, where history and death are cataloged side by side. But the strangest relic of all might be the alleged Black Book of Confessions, an archive containing the secrets revealed by initiates during their rites. If it exists, it would be the most dangerous object in the tomb, a library of the private truths of America's elite, guarded for generations. Of course, no outsider has ever verified these claims. Bonesmen neither confirm nor deny them. And so the tomb remains, its windows sealed, its doors locked, its relics hidden. Are these artifacts real, or are they stories planted to terrify rivals and fuel the society's legend? Perhaps that's the point. In Skull and Bones, fact and myth are always entwined, and the line between them is never clear.
At first glance, Skull and Bones might look like just another secret society on Yale's campus, but look closer and you'll see something more. A quiet, deliberate conquest of Yale's very institutions. From its founding in 1832, the society understood one principle: control begins at the top. And at Yale, the top meant the student leadership. Back in the 19th century, Yale wasn't just a university. It was almost like a miniature kingdom. Students ran nearly everything: the debate clubs, the literary societies, the student newspaper, even the athletic associations. These groups weren't just extracurriculars. They were the pathways to prestige, influence, and lifelong connections. So what did Skull and Bones do? They infiltrated them. Year after year, Bones tapped the brightest, most ambitious students, not just athletes and scholars, but those with the charisma to lead. Once inside, they were encouraged to rise to the presidency of Yale's key organizations. Within a few decades, a startling pattern emerged. Almost every major leadership post on campus was held by a Bonesman. The Yale Literary Magazine, the oldest student publication, Bonesmen edited it. The Debating Society, which groomed future politicians, Bones ran it. The football team's captaincy, often a Bonesman. Even the student government was packed with them. To outsiders, it seemed like a coincidence. To insiders, it was strategy. By filling Yale's most visible roles with Bonesmen, the society didn't just boost its prestige, it controlled the narrative of student life. And it didn't stop at Yale. Those same Bonesmen, polished by leadership roles, would go on to dominate law firms, banking houses, publishing companies, and eventually, politics. Yale was simply the training ground. One of the most telling symbols of this control came in the form of a strange key, the symbol of the society itself. The crossed bones and skull, etched under rings and insignias, became a kind of silent badge. Spotted on campus, and you knew, this man was part of the network. By the early 20th century, critics were already calling Skull and Bones a power within a power. Yale administrators couldn't fight it because many of them were Bonesmen themselves. What began as a fraternity had become a shadow hierarchy. And so, Skull and Bones didn't just exist at Yale. It was Yale.
What happens when a secret society trains its members in leadership, discipline, and secrecy, and then sends them into the world? In the case of Skull and Bones, the answer is simple. It builds an empire. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Skull and Bones alumni had begun making their mark far beyond Yale. They didn't just become lawyers or bankers, they became kingmakers. Many Bonesmen entered Wall Street, where family wealth and fraternal ties opened doors. Firms like Brown Brothers Harriman, once the largest private bank in America, were filled with Bones alumni. This wasn't coincidence, it was the network in action. Take W. Averill Harriman, a powerful Bonesman from the class of 1913. He transformed his family's fortune into political clout, serving as U.S. Ambassador, Governor of New York, and even a presidential advisor. His firm became a launchpad for other Bonesmen, including Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush. But Wall Street was only one piece of the puzzle. The other was far darker – intelligence. After World War II, as the United States created the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and later the CIA, Skull and Bonesmen were at the center of it all. Why? Because their training at Yale, loyalty to the Brotherhood, comfort with secrecy, and a global network made them perfect recruits. Henry Stimson, Bonesman class of 1888, served as Secretary of War during both World Wars. His protégés, many of them Bonesmen, went on to shape the early CIA. The intelligence world became another extension of the tomb. In fact, for years people whispered that the CIA was practically a Yale club. Some of its most influential officers were Skull and Bones members, and Yale graduates filled its ranks disproportionately. It was as if the society had found a new campus, one where secrecy wasn't just a game but national policy. Add to this the Bones' presence in publishing through giants like Time magazine co-founder Henry Luce, and you begin to see the scope. Finance, intelligence, media, politics, all tied by the same quiet fraternity handshakes. Was this accidental or by design? That remains the great mystery. But by the mid-20th century, Skull and Bones was no longer just a Yale legend. It was a hidden power structure in America itself.
When people think of Skull and Bones today, one family name almost always comes up – the Bushes. 3 generations, all members. And their story illustrates just how far the society's influence can stretch, from Yale's campus to the Oval Office itself. It begins with Prescott Bush, Bones' class of 1917. Prescott came from privilege, but Skull and Bones gave him more than status. It gave him connections. After Yale, he joined Brown Brothers Harriman, the powerhouse investment bank teeming with Bonesmen. From there, his network launched him into politics, where he served as a U.S. Senator from Connecticut. But Prescott's legacy wasn't just his own. He passed the Bones torch to his son, George Herbert Walker Bush, Bones class of 1948. George H.W. Bush's career is a textbook case of how Skull and Bones connections could shape a life. After Yale, he entered the oil business, then politics, rising to congressman, UN ambassador, CIA director, vice president, and finally the 41st president of the United States. Throughout it all, his Skull and Bones pedigree quietly shadowed him. Then came the third generation, George W. Bush, Bones class of 1968. Like his father and grandfather, George W. left the tomb with powerful allies. He too rose through business, politics, and eventually the presidency, becoming the 43rd President of the United States. Think about that for a moment. 2 U.S. presidents and a senator, all Bonesmen, all from the same family. It's no wonder conspiracy theorists point to Skull and Bones as a hidden hand in American politics. The Bushes themselves rarely spoke about it. When George W. Bush and John Kerry, both Bonesmen, ran against each other in the 2004 presidential election, a reporter famously asked them about the society. Both men laughed nervously, gave the same answer, and dodged the question. It's a secret. That eerie moment on live television only deepened the mystique. 2 men competing for the presidency, both bound by the same oath of silence from a secret society at Yale. What are the odds? To some, the Bush family's Bones membership proves nothing more than Yale tradition. To others, it's evidence of a generational pipeline of power engineered by the society itself. Either way, the Bush dynasty ensures that Skull and Bones isn't just a college legend, it is forever tied to the history of the American presidency.
Long before the Bush family rose to prominence, another American dynasty helped cement Skull and Bones as a force in politics, the Tafts. Their influence shows how the society became woven directly into the highest levels of government. The story begins with Alphonso Taft, Yale class of 1833. He wasn't just a member of Skull and Bones, he was one of its co-founders. Alphonso went on to become U.S. Attorney General and Secretary of War under President Ulysses S. Grant. But his most lasting contribution wasn't in office, it was in bloodline. His son, William Howard Taft, Yale class of 1878, carried the family's legacy to unimaginable heights. Taft became the 27th President of the United States and later the 10th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the only person in history to hold both titles. Though William Howard Taft himself was not initiated into Skull and Bones, his family's deep ties to the society ensured his rise was backed by its network. His son, Robert A. Taft, Yale class of 1910, became one of the most powerful senators of the 20th century, often called Mr. Republican. From there, the Taft name became a permanent fixture in American politics, producing governors, senators, and judges, many of them Yale alumni, some whispered to be Bonesmen. For Skull and Bones, the Taft dynasty was proof of concept. The society wasn't just a fraternity, it was a family tradition, passed down through generations. A Taft at Yale almost meant a Taft in the tomb. The connection also reinforced something darker, the idea that Skull and Bones wasn't just about individual power, but about creating dynasties, families who would hold influence across decades, even centuries. Think about it, the society had one family at its founding, another dominating the presidency in the 20th century,
And yet another, the Bushes, shaping the 21st century. 3 dynasties, 3 eras, all tied to the same locked tomb at Yale. Coincidence or design? That's the question historians and conspiracy theorists still argue about. What's undeniable is that the Tafts were the first great political dynasty of Skull and Bones, proving the society's influence could extend beyond campus friendships into the very machinery of American democracy.
When the world plunged into the chaos of World War II, Skull and Bones was no longer just a college fraternity. It had become a quiet supplier of leaders, strategists, and spy masters, men who would help shape the modern intelligence community. The bridge between the society and America's wartime power structure was Henry Stimson, Yale Bones class of 1888. Stimson served as Secretary of War under both Presidents Taft and Franklin Roosevelt. He was one of the most influential Bonesmen of his era, and he filled the War Department with protégés, many of whom shared his Yale and Bones connections. Under Stimson, Yale became a fertile recruiting ground for the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, America's first central intelligence agency and the forerunner of the CIA. It wasn't just about academics. The OSS wanted men trained in secrecy, loyalty, and discretion. Skull and Bones had been teaching that for a century. Names like McGeorge Bundy, Bones 40, and William Bundy, Bones 39, emerged during this period. Both went on to hold high-ranking intelligence and defense roles during the Cold War. Their careers started with the same initiation inside the tomb at Yale. Even George H.W. Bush, Bones 48, though too young to serve in World War II intelligence, would later become director of the CIA, a position many see as the culmination of the society's long dance with America's spy network. But Skull and Bones' involvement in World War II wasn't only bureaucratic. Whispers suggest that members participated in covert missions, intelligence gathering, and even post-war operations involving Nazi assets and scientists. While official records remain murky, the Society's fingerprints on the early CIA are undeniable. By 1947, when the Central Intelligence Agency was officially founded, Yale men dominated its upper ranks. One OSS veteran famously remarked, "The CIA was Wall Street, Yale, and Skull and Bones." This blending of finance, intelligence, and politics created what some call the American establishment, a network of elites whose roots often traced back to New Haven, Connecticut. So in World War II, Skull and Bones moved from secret ceremonies to global strategy. The same young men who once lay in coffins in the tomb now played chess on the world stage, with entire nations as the pieces.
If World War II placed Skull and Bonesmen inside the machinery of American intelligence, the Cold War gave them an entirely new playground, one of secrecy, proxy wars, and global strategy. The Cold War wasn't fought with open armies. It was fought with information, influence, and ideology. And that was exactly the skill set Bonesmen had been honing for over a century. One of the most striking families here is the Bundys. McGeorge Bundy, Bones class of 1940, became National Security Advisor to Presidents Kennedy and Johnson. He was one of the architects of U.S. Cold War policy and a key figure in escalating America's involvement in Vietnam. His brother, William Bundy, Bones class of 1939, held senior posts in both the CIA and the State Department, shaping strategy in Southeast Asia. Together, the Bundys represented the intellectual elite of Skull and Bones, sharp, secretive, and deeply embedded in Washington's foreign policy machine. But they weren't alone. Other Bonesmen moved through the corridors of power,
advising presidents, managing defense policy, and steering the conversation on how America should confront the Soviet Union. Their reach extended beyond government, too. Bonesmen in media, such as Henry Luce, founder of Time, Life, and Fortune magazines, helped frame the Cold War for the American public. Through news and imagery, they built the narrative of the U.S. as the champion of freedom against communist tyranny. Critics, however, saw something darker. They argued that Skull and Bones' influence led to a closed circle of decision-making, where the same Yale-educated elites set policies without input from outside voices. In Vietnam especially, this became a bitter controversy. When McGeorge Bundy supported bombing campaigns and troop escalations, many wondered, was this truly national strategy or the worldview of a privileged inner circle? By the 1970s, as trust in government collapsed after Vietnam and Watergate, whispers about secret societies and invisible governments grew louder. To conspiracy theorists, Skull and Bones wasn't just a relic of Yale tradition. It was part of the hidden establishment pulling the strings of America's foreign policy. Real or imagined, the timing was uncanny. In an age defined by espionage and secrecy, a society built on loyalty, silence, and hidden rituals seemed almost designed for Cold War dominance.
If politics and intelligence were two arms of Skull and Bones' influence, finance was its beating heart, and nowhere did the society's grip feel stronger than on Wall Street. From the late 19th century onward, Bonesmen streamed into banking and investment houses. But this wasn't just a matter of Yale men getting good jobs. It was the deliberate building of a financial network that tied Skull and Bones to the very flow of American capital. The clearest example is Brown Brothers Harriman, one of the most powerful private banks of its time. Founded in part by Bones families, the firm became a magnet for society alumni. Bonesmen like W. Averill Harriman, class of 1913, turned it into a financial empire, investing in railroads, shipping, and later, international banking. Alongside him was Prescott Bush, Bones' class of 1917, who served as a managing partner. Through Brown Brothers Harriman, Bush and Harriman weren't just moving money, they were influencing politics, industries, and international affairs. Critics point out that during the 1930s, Brown Brothers Harriman had business ties to companies in Germany, some of which were later accused of supporting the Nazi regime. Though the firm denied wrongdoing, the episode fueled conspiracy theories that Skull and Bones was willing to work with any power as long as it served its interests. But the reach of Bonesmen in finance extended far beyond one firm. Over the decades, members sat on the boards of Chase Manhattan Bank, Morgan Stanley, and the Federal Reserve. They steered investment funds, insurance companies, and industrial giants. They even had their fingerprints on philanthropy and think tanks. Bonesmen used their financial clout to shape the direction of organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Brookings Institution, which in turn influenced U.S. economic and foreign policy. This blending of finance, politics, and secrecy led critics to dub Skull and Bones part of an Eastern establishment, a small group of Ivy League elites who quietly set the course of American capitalism. To outsiders, it looked like coincidence, Yale graduates helping each other succeed. But to those who believe in the power of the tomb, it looked like a carefully managed machine, a network designed not just to make money, but to steer the economy of a nation. By the mid-20th century, one thing was clear. If you wanted to trace the veins of Wall Street power, many of them led back to the same locked doors at Yale. If politics shapes laws and finance moves money, media controls perception. and Skull and Bones understood this. Through newspapers, magazines, and publishing houses, Bonesmen helped mold how Americans saw the world. The most famous of these media titans was Henry Luce, Bones class of 1920. Luce co-founded Time magazine in 1923, followed by Fortune in 1930, Life in 1936, and Sports Illustrated in 1954. His magazines didn't just report the news, they defined it. Luce's empire reached millions of readers every week. His magazines shaped how Americans viewed World War II, the Cold War, and the rise of American power. His editorial stance was unapologetically pro-Western, pro-capitalist, and interventionist, echoing the worldview of the Skull and Bones network. Critics often pointed out how Time framed U.S. foreign policy decisions. When Bonesmen and government escalated in Vietnam, Luce's media outlets were there to promote the domino theory. When the Cold War needed champions, Life magazine produced iconic covers glorifying American strength. And it wasn't just Luce. Bonesmen appeared throughout publishing and journalism. Some sat on the boards of major newspapers. Others became foreign correspondents or editors. The Society's influence in media wasn't always visible, but its fingerprints were there. A preference for secrecy, an alignment with establishment power, and a narrative that cast Yale-trained elites as natural leaders of the free world. The real question is this: was it deliberate coordination or simply like-minded men moving in the same circles? Skeptics say Luce was just a brilliant publisher with strong opinions. Believers say he was the Society's mouthpiece, the voice of Skull and Bones disguised as the voice of America. Either way, the result was the same. For much of the 20th century, Bonesmen didn't just hold the levers of political and financial power. They also shaped the stories Americans told themselves about who they were and what role they played in the world.
Few images are as eerie as those whispered about in Yale's secret tomb, a young man lying inside a coffin, confessing his secrets while masked figures look on. But in Skull and Bones, the coffin isn't just a prop, it's a symbol of death, rebirth, and binding loyalty. Accounts from alleged insiders and investigative journalists describe the ritual in fragments. The initiate, chosen as a senior, enters the tomb on his initiation night. At some point during the ceremony, he is told to strip away his worldly identity, sometimes symbolically, sometimes literally. He then climbs into a coffin. The coffin represents the death of the old self. The initiate, once just another Yale student, symbolically dies in the eyes of the Brotherhood. Inside the coffin, he must confess, not small mistakes, but his deepest, most personal secrets. Sexual experiences, fears, ambitions, failures, nothing is off limits. Around him, older Bonesmen stand in silence, sometimes wearing robes, sometimes masks. These are not just witnesses, they are keepers of the secret. Once spoken, the confession belongs to the order. When the ritual ends, the initiate is pulled from the coffin, symbolically reborn as a new man, a knight of Eulogia, bound for life to the Brotherhood. From that moment on, he is no longer just an individual. He is part of the collective, tied to generations of Bonesmen stretching back to 1832. Some versions of the story describe the ritual chamber itself, dimly lit, lined with skulls and symbols, filled with the smell of incense. A clock without hands sits on the wall, a reminder that time has no meaning inside the tomb. For outsiders, it sounds bizarre, even sinister. But for the Society, it's a powerful psychological experience, stripping away identity, binding men through vulnerability, and creating loyalty that cannot easily be broken. The coffin ritual also explains why Bonesmen are said to be so loyal to one another decades later. After all, Who could betray the very group that holds your darkest truths? Whether these details are 100% accurate or embellished by rumor, the coffin ceremony has become the most iconic and unsettling symbol of Skull and Bones. It is death and rebirth, secrecy and control, theater and reality, all in one.
At the corner of High Street and Chapel in New Haven, Connecticut, sits a windowless sandstone building. To thousands of Yale students who pass it every day, it is simply the tomb. But to Skull and Bones, it is the heart of their empire. The tomb was first built in 1856, designed in a strange blend of Egyptian and Greek Revival styles. Its imposing facade, smooth sandstone, no windows, a heavy wooden door, gives away nothing. To outsiders, it looks less like a fraternity house and more like a mausoleum. And that's no accident. Everything about the building radiates secrecy, permanence, and death. Inside, according to rare leaked descriptions, the tomb is a labyrinth of chambers, libraries, and ritual halls. The entrance hall is said to be lined with portraits of past Bonesmen, reminding initiates that they walk in the footsteps of power. The most infamous room is the inner sanctum, where initiations take place. Skulls, coffins, and symbols of mortality dominate the decor. The phrase, "Time is dead," reportedly hangs above one chamber, reinforcing the idea that once inside, you step outside the ordinary world. Other rooms, if rumors are to be believed, are filled with relics, bones, artifacts, stolen treasures, even gifts from alumni. Some say there's a trophy room where Geronimo's skull rests. Others whisper about maps, coded documents, and shelves of confession transcripts dating back over a century. The architecture itself seems designed for secrecy. The walls are thick, the windows sealed, and even soundproofing is rumored to have been added to keep chants and ceremonies from drifting into the night air. But the strangest part is how silent it is. Students at Yale often say that walking past the tomb at night feels unsettling. No music, no chatter, no signs of life. Just the looming stone facade. Some even claim they've heard faint chants or organ music from within, though no one can prove it. Symbolism runs deep, too. The Egyptian motifs carved into the building echo themes of rebirth and eternity. The Greek Revival style hints at ancient brotherhoods. And of course, the skull and crossbones symbol, etched on plaques, furniture, and perhaps even etched into stone, looms everywhere. To members, the tomb is a sacred space, part temple, part theater, part archive. To outsiders, it is the most mysterious building in New Haven. It locked puzzle box in plain sight. And that's probably the point. Its presence on campus is a reminder to everyone at Yale. Skull and Bones is here. It has always been here, and it is watching.
Skull and Bones is not just a one-night initiation. It runs on a secret calendar, a rhythm of gatherings, ceremonies, and symbolic events that structure the entire year for its members. Each spring, the cycle begins with Tap Night. This is the moment juniors at Yale are chosen. On that night, Bonesmen fan out across campus, dressed in dark suits, tapping selected students on the shoulder with the cryptic phrase, "Skull and Bones, accept or reject." Those who accept are marked for transformation. From that moment, they are pulled into the society's orbit. After Tap Night comes initiation season, where the newly tapped juniors undergo ceremonies, the most infamous being the coffin ritual we've already uncovered. These weeks are a whirlwind of tests, confessions, and bonding exercises.
Every night they're pulled into the tomb where secrets are spilled and loyalty is tested. Once fully initiated, members enter into the weekly meetings that define the Skull and Bones experience. These are not casual get-togethers. They are structured, confidential sessions in the tomb where each member takes turns revealing personal histories, confessing experiences, or debating philosophical questions. The idea is that nothing is hidden from one another. By the end of the year, each Bonesman supposedly knows more about his peers than their closest family members. There are also seasonal rituals. Rumors say certain dates in the academic year, equinoxes perhaps, or symbolic anniversaries, are marked with theatrical ceremonies. Candles, costumes, chants, and even mock trials have been reported. These echo the themes of death, rebirth, loyalty, and secrecy that define the order. As graduation approaches, Bonesmen gather for their final conclave, a last secretive feast where the seniors are bid farewell into the world, now considered lifetime members. This is where they receive the promise of the Society's lifelong support, the Patriarch network of powerful alumni. Even after graduation, the ritual year continues. Each spring, alumni known as Patriarchs return for an annual retreat, blending old traditions with networking. The tomb itself sometimes fills with men decades apart in age, united by the same secrets. This secret calendar ensures that Skull and Bones isn't just a club, it's a living, breathing tradition. Every year, the cycle repeats. Tap, initiation, confession, bonding, farewell. And like the seasons themselves, the Society renews its strength.
Every spring, as the sun sets over Yale's campus, whispers begin to spread. Students wait nervously in dorm rooms, libraries, and courtyards. Some hope, some fear, and some pretend not to care. But everyone knows it's Tap Night. Tap Night is when Skull and Bones reveals its chosen ones. The ceremony is simple on the surface, but charged with centuries of weight. Senior Bonesmen, dressed sharply in dark suits, move across campus with purpose. Their eyes scan the crowd, looking for the juniors they've selected. When they find one, they approach and utter the chilling phrase, "Skull and Bones, accept or reject." The rules are strict. You must answer immediately. No hesitation, no bargaining. A yes marks the beginning of your secret life. A no means the opportunity vanishes forever. For those chosen, it's a surreal moment. Imagine standing in the quad when a dark-suited figure taps your shoulder and suddenly your future changes. Some describe feeling a rush of pride, a sense of destiny. Others feel dread, knowing the Society's reputation for secrecy and control. But Tap Night is not only about who gets in, it's also about who gets left behind. At Yale, being tapped for Bones is more than just joining a club. It's a signal to the entire campus. You are elite, destined for power. Those overlooked can feel crushed, invisible, forgotten. Rivalries among societies like Scroll and Key or Wolf's Head make the night even more dramatic, with societies sometimes competing for the same student. Stories of Tap Nights past add to the lore. One tale speaks of a student who was tapped by Bones but, in a rare act of defiance, loudly rejected them in public, shocking the crowd. Another legend claims that certain families with long Bones traditions essentially guarantee their children's selection, making Tap Night less about merit and more about legacy. There's also an undercurrent of strategy. Bones carefully selects members who will complement one another. Athletes, scholars, leaders of campus groups, editors of the Yale Daily News.
Each class of 15 is curated like a miniature government, designed to wield influence both on campus and in the wider world after graduation. To outsiders, Tap Night may seem theatrical, almost harmless, but to those who live it, the night carries immense weight. For a few chosen juniors, a tap on the shoulder is the opening act in a lifelong drama of secrecy, power, and loyalty. And for everyone else, Tap Night is a reminder of the invisible hierarchy running through Yale.
If you've ever wondered why Skull and Bones only selects 15 members each year, it isn't random. It's deliberate, symbolic, and deeply tied to the society's inner workings. Every Tap Night, the society inducts a class of 15 juniors, who then become seniors the following year, the central figures in the tomb's rituals. This number has never changed since the Society's founding in 1832. Why 15? Historians and conspiracy theorists have offered several explanations. Numerical symbolism. 15 is the sum of 7, a sacred number in many traditions, and 8, symbolizing infinity and rebirth. Some suggest it represents balance between the finite and infinite. Manageable secrecy. 15 is small enough to keep control, but large enough to build a network of different talents and backgrounds. Military inspiration. Early members modeled aspects of the society on elite units, and 15 may have been the ideal squad number. Inside the society, the 15 aren't just random peers, they're curated like pieces of a puzzle. Skull and Bones often chooses a top athlete, often the captain of a major Yale team, a Yale Daily News editor, a star debater or theater leader, a political leader, student council president, for example. Legacy students, children of prominent Bonesmen. Diversity picks, to bring in a wider set of perspectives, or, cynically, to maintain influence across different social groups. Together, this group forms a miniature version of the power structure Skull and Bones hopes to project into the real world. Each member brings something the others lack, making the whole stronger than the sum of its parts. Once tapped, the 15 spend their senior year locked together in ritual after ritual. They eat meals together, confess secrets, and perform ceremonies in the tomb. By the end, they're said to be bonded more tightly than brothers, bound by shared humiliation, vulnerability, and secrecy. The number 15 also carries a weight beyond the campus. Each new class joins a long chain of 15 member groups stretching back nearly 2 centuries. Today, there are thousands of living Bonesmen, but each can trace their origins back to one of those small groups of 15. So, while to the outside world Skull and Bones looks like a monolith, inside it's a mosaic, built piece by piece, class by class, 15 by 15. And this structure is what allows the society to control not just individuals, but generations.
What binds Skull and Bones together isn't just secrecy. It's vulnerability, forced, raw, and unforgettable. The confessions are what make Bonesmen inseparable and unbreakable. Every week inside the tomb, the 15 gather for what members call life histories. Each initiate, one by one, must stand before his peers and tell everything about himself. Not the polished resume version, not the smiling Yale student version, the real version. Bonesmen confess their deepest personal secrets, childhood traumas, family scandals, sexual experiences, sometimes in explicit detail, ambitions, fears, failures, and private shame. Nothing is off limits. In fact, the more humiliating, the better. The idea is to strip away the ego, to break down the individual until nothing is left but truth. But the process serves another purpose: control. By knowing each other's darkest secrets, the members are forever tied together. The society holds the power of memory, and with it, leverage. There are chilling stories of these sessions. Some claim Bonesmen are pressured into exaggerating or even inventing scandals just to make the ritual more intense. Others recall the strange sense of liberation, as if confessing in the candlelit tomb was the first time they had ever spoken honestly in their lives. Observers have compared it to a mix of a Catholic confessional, a military hazing, and a group therapy session. Except here, the therapists are your peers, and they are keeping your secrets forever. Once the cycle is complete, each Bonesman has shared his life, unfiltered, unprotected, with the other 14. The result is a bond far stronger than ordinary friendship. They have seen one another's shadows, and that shadow is now part of the collective. This is the genius and the danger of Skull and Bones. Loyalty doesn't come from an oath alone. It comes from the knowledge that betrayal would mean exposing not just your own secrets, but those of your brothers. In the world of power and politics, where information is everything, this ritual is more than bonding. It's a lifelong leash.
Inside the tomb, a member isn't just a student. He becomes a character in a secret drama, given a new identity, a title, and a role to play in the society's theater of power. Each initiate is reborn as a Knight of Eulogia. Eulogia, in Greek, means blessing, but in Bones lore, it takes on darker tones. Some insiders claim Eulogia is worshipped almost as a deity, the goddess of eloquence and blessing, but also tied to the cycle of death and rebirth. Once tapped, each new Knight of Eulogia receives a secret name. These names aren't random. They often draw from myth, literature, or history, chosen to reflect the member's personality or ambitions. For example, a fiery debater might be named after Napoleon, while a quiet intellectual could be dubbed Hamlet. But among these names are fixed, ceremonial titles, roles that reappear every year. Magog, the dark counterpart of Gog, drawn from biblical prophecy. Traditionally, the oldest member of the class takes this role. Magog presides over rituals with authority, embodying chaos and dominance. Little Devil, the society's mischief maker, whose role is to challenge and provoke others during ceremonies. Boaz and Shibboleth, names borrowed from biblical lore representing the guardians of the order. Long Devil, a figure who often embodies ambition and fire. The Shrew, said to be the critical voice of the group, needling others to keep them sharp. Popocatépetl, yes, that's real, a strange, almost humorous role named after a volcano. This member is expected to erupt when least expected. The strangest part? These names aren't just for fun. They're used in rituals, chants, and even conversations inside the tomb. When a Bonesman enters the secret chamber, he sheds his real-world identity and becomes his title. The purpose is psychological. By stepping into a role, the initiate leaves behind his ordinary self. He becomes part of a story that stretches back through generations. Imagine knowing that 100 years ago, another Yale senior also played Magog, another played Little Devil, and now you're carrying that same torch. This continuity is what makes Skull and Bones feel timeless. The characters live on long after the students themselves graduate. To outsiders, the titles might sound theatrical, even silly, but inside the tomb, they transformed the members into something more than individuals. They become archetypes, bound by tradition, ritual, and secrecy. And in the world beyond Yale, those archetypes follow them, a secret identity that whispers in their minds long after they leave New Haven.
No image is more associated with the society than the skull and crossbones. But for Skull and Bones, this isn't just a logo. It's a symbol packed with layers of meaning, spanning centuries and cultures. The skull and crossbones has long been a symbol of death, mortality, and warning. Pirates used it on flags to strike fear. Alchemists and secret societies used it to signify hidden knowledge and transformation. Skull and Bones borrowed this symbol in the 19th century, but they gave it a unique twist. Inside the tomb, the symbol appears everywhere, etched on rings, carved into furniture, and painted on doors. It's a reminder of mortality, but also of rebirth. Every initiate dies during the Coffin ritual, only to be reborn as a Knight of Eulogia. The symbol serves as a visual reinforcement of that cycle. Some historians believe the crossbones also have Masonic and alchemical roots. In alchemy, the skull represents death or the destruction of the old self, while the crossbones symbolize the crucible, the place where transformation occurs. In Bones rituals, this metaphor is literal. The initiate must shed his old identity before gaining the wisdom and power of the Brotherhood. The number of symbols also matters. Some descriptions suggest that exactly 2 crossed bones and a single skull are displayed in ceremonial chambers, representing duality, life and death, past and future, secrecy and revelation. Others note that the tomb's furniture and carvings reinforce this duality. Mirrors, symmetrical designs, and repeating patterns that echo the symbol's geometry. The society also has a motto, rarely seen outside, Cui Bono, Latin for who benefits. It's a question that guides the ethos of Skull and Bones, subtly linking the symbol of death to the pursuit of power. Every decision, ritual, and confession is framed through this lens. Who benefits, and how will the society maintain advantage? Finally, the Skull and Bones serves as a warning to outsiders. Its omnipresence is a silent message. You may see us, you may know we exist, but you cannot enter, you cannot understand, and you cannot interfere. It's both invitation and barrier, a badge of privilege and secrecy. In short, Skull and Bones didn't just choose a symbol because it looked intimidating. They chose it because it encapsulates death, rebirth, secrecy, power, and transformation, all the ideals that define the society.
One of the most notorious rumors surrounding Skull and Bones involves the Apache leader Geronimo. According to legend, his skull was stolen and placed inside the tomb, a macabre trophy meant to symbolize power over death and the conquered. Geronimo, who died in 1909, was a symbol of Native American resistance. Some accounts claim that after his death, Bonesmen affiliated with Yale somehow acquired his skull. It allegedly ended up inside the society's secret chambers in New Haven. The story first surfaced in newspapers decades later, fueled by investigative journalists and conspiracy theorists. They claimed that the skull was used in initiation rituals, perhaps as a centerpiece of the coffin ceremony, or even as a test of courage and loyalty for new initiates. To insiders, this story is often denied. Yale and Skull and Bones have never confirmed it, and some suggest the tale is a myth amplified by fear of the unknown. But whether real or symbolic, it highlights something important. The society's rituals often blur the line between life and death, reality and legend. Why would Bones want a skull like Geronimo's? Analysts suggest several reasons. Symbolic power? Possessing the skull of a feared figure could represent dominance over mortality and rebellion. Ritual use. It may have been intended as a centerpiece for rites emphasizing transformation and loyalty.
secrecy, and mystique. Stories like this cement the tomb's reputation as a place of mystery, elevating its psychological influence. Over time, the story of Geronimo's skull became part of the mythology of Skull and Bones, repeated in books, documentaries, and campus lore. Even if untrue, it serves the same purpose, instilling awe, fear, and fascination. The legend also feeds into a larger narrative. Skull and Bones doesn't just exist at Yale. Its influence stretches into politics, military, and society. And its rituals, whether fact or folklore, suggest a comfort with transgression and a fascination with ultimate power, even over death itself.
One of the most persistent rumors about Skull and Bones involves its alleged ties to Germany during the 1930s and 1940s, a period when global power, finance, and ideology collided. The story begins with Brown Brothers Harriman, the powerful Wall Street bank heavily staffed by Bonesmen. In the 1930s, the firm conducted business with German companies, some of which later became part of the Nazi war effort. Prescott Bush, Bones' class of 1917 and grandfather of George W. Bush, was a partner at Brown Brothers Harriman during this period. Critics point out that the bank helped finance and manage industrial operations in Germany, raising questions about whether Skull and Bones alumni were knowingly or unknowingly aiding the Nazis. Supporters argue that business connections predated the Nazi regime and were severed once the war began. The intrigue deepens with allegations that some Bonesmen maintained contacts in Germany through universities and social networks, exchanging information and influence under the guise of elite diplomacy. While direct evidence of ideological alignment is scarce, conspiracy theorists claim the society's philosophy of loyalty, secrecy, and elitism could have created a fertile environment for morally ambiguous decisions. This controversy is amplified by Skull and Bones' culture of secrecy. Because the society hides records and rituals, outsiders cannot fully verify what members knew or did. The lack of transparency fuels speculation. Did the tomb harbor sympathizers, opportunists, or merely businessmen navigating complex international markets? Investigative historians note that, whether intentional or not, the society's network certainly enabled members to wield influence in banking, politics, and even international affairs during a period of global upheaval. In a world where information was power, being part of Bones may have allowed members to shape events from behind the scenes. Ultimately, the alleged Nazi connections remain controversial. Documents show business ties, but the extent of ideological alignment or complicity is unclear. Yet the story reinforces Skull and Bones' reputation, a fraternity whose reach and secrecy have sometimes intersected with the most powerful and morally ambiguous forces in history.
While the Bush family is the most famous example, Skull and Bones' influence in presidential politics extends beyond them. For nearly a century, members of the society have appeared in campaigns, administrations, and advisory roles, often quietly, often behind the scenes. The most direct path is through candidates themselves. Bonesmen like George H.W. Bush, 48, and George W. Bush, 68, reached the presidency, but others have held influential positions without ever occupying the Oval Office. John Kerry, 66, Democratic presidential candidate in 2004. A Bonesman, Kerry's campaign famously faced off against George W. Bush. The two had known each other from Yale, though the full extent of their interactions inside the society remains private. William Howard Taft, through family connections,
While technically earlier than modern campaigns, his family's legacy of Skull and Bones involvement helped establish political influence that shaped nominations and party leadership. Beyond candidates, Bonesmen often serve as campaign strategists, advisors, and donors. Skull and Bones alumni are disproportionately present in finance, law, and media, the very sectors that can make or break a presidential run. Some analysts argue that this creates an invisible network operating across party lines. Loyalty to Skull and Bones may sometimes supersede political ideology, creating connections between ostensibly opposing politicians. John Kerry and George W. Bush, despite running against each other, were both part of the same hidden fraternity, a fact that has fueled decades of speculation about how elite networks influence American democracy. Even campaign finance can show the society's fingerprints. Bones alumni with wealth and influence can direct funds, media attention, or endorsements in subtle ways, shaping outcomes without the public ever realizing it. Finally, Skull and Bones' influence doesn't stop after elections. Members who hold office often bring fellow Bonesmen into key positions, perpetuating a cycle where the society's network extends into governance, policymaking, and international diplomacy. The result? A web of influence where Skull and Bones alumni quietly shape the future of the nation, sometimes through overt political power, sometimes through subtler channels.
Among the many myths of Skull and Bones, none are as chilling as the stories surrounding those who break the society's sacred code. According to legend, the tomb itself becomes a place of judgment for the disloyal. While concrete evidence is scarce, and intentionally so, whispers persist about a so-called Tomb of Silence. It is said to be a hidden chamber or a metaphorical place within the society where members who betray secrets face consequences. Some former students describe it not as a physical room, but as a network of social, professional, and psychological pressures. Social erasure. A former Bonesman who breaks the oath may find himself excluded from alumni networks, losing mentorship, job opportunities, and connections that define elite circles. Psychological weight. The society's power over secrets means that the threat of exposure can haunt a member for decades. The mere fear of consequences is often enough to enforce loyalty. Legends of ritual censure. Some accounts speak of symbolic punishments, being made to stand in a coffin alone, ritual humiliation, or other ceremonial acts reinforcing obedience. These stories are never confirmed, but their power lies in the fear they instill. The Tomb of Silence also reinforces loyalty through mystery. New initiates are told about these punishments, whether real or exaggerated, creating a psychological bond. Fear becomes a tool, and secrecy becomes sacred. Over time, the legend has evolved. Books, articles, and documentaries have amplified the story, blending fact with myth. Outsiders speculate about ritualized threats, occult practices, and even covert blackmail. Whether literal or symbolic, the Tomb of Silence functions as a deterrent. The society protects itself by cultivating both reverence and fear. The chilling lesson: in Skull and Bones, betrayal isn't just a personal failure, it's an offense against a centuries-old brotherhood. And in a society built on secrecy, even whispers can carry immense weight.
Skull and Bones doesn't exist in isolation. While it may be the most famous, it is part of a wider ecosystem of secret societies, both at Yale and around the world. These networks often overlap, collaborate, and sometimes compete, all while operating in the shadows. At Yale alone, there are other elite societies. Scroll and Key, founded in 1841, slightly younger than Bones, it has a similar focus on secrecy and leadership. Some Bonesmen have dual connections or social links with Scroll and Key alumni. Wolf's Head, founded in 1883, it emphasizes loyalty and discretion. Rivalry with Bones is legendary, but so are occasional alliances,
through inter-society friendships. Berzelius, a science-oriented society, smaller but influential, often linked via academic or research collaborations with Bones members. Outside Yale, extensions extend into the Ivy League and beyond. Harvard's Porcellian Club, a private elite society that shares social and financial networks with Bones alumni. Princeton's Ivy Club. While membership doesn't overlap, alumni often move in the same social and professional circles, creating informal networks. Internationally, the web grows even more complex. Bonesmen involved in finance, politics, and intelligence often interact with foreign elites, members of European aristocratic societies, British secret clubs, and international banking networks. These interactions sometimes manifest in shared investments, diplomatic collaborations, or cultural exchanges. The effect is subtle but powerful, an informal global network of influence, where shared rituals, education, and elite connections bind members together. Even without overt coordination, Bones alumni can identify one another and leverage trust built in secrecy. Some conspiracy theorists take this further, claiming that Skull and Bones is effectively a node in a global secret elite, shaping world events through finance, politics, and intelligence. While much of this is speculation, it highlights the society's far-reaching reputation. At the very least, Skull and Bones is a masterclass in networking, an ancient organization that converts secrecy into influence and influence into a kind of quiet global power.
Skull and Bones thrives on symbolism. Beyond skulls, coffins, and secret titles, the society is obsessed with numbers, letters, and codes, subtle layers that bind rituals, ceremonies, and identities together. The number 322. Perhaps the most famous Bones number is 322, which appears on rings, documents, and even in the society's emblem. Its origin is debated. One theory, it references the year 322 BCE, when the Greek orator Demosthenes died, symbolizing the death of the old order. Another theory links it to secret political or philosophical ideals, emphasizing power and continuity. Some say 322 is shorthand for Skull and Bones, class of 222, a cryptic reference to their ritual calendar. Whatever the truth, it serves as an identifier for members and a symbol of shared understanding. Letters and ciphers. Bones often uses Greek and Latin letters in rituals. These letters may spell out mottos, ethical imperatives, or warnings to initiates. Some claims suggest that the letters are part of coded communication, allowing members to recognize each other or leave subtle messages across years and continents. Numerology and rituals. Numbers recur in ceremonies. 15 members per class, 2 primary bones in the emblem, 322 as a historical or symbolic marker. Rituals may be timed to align with dates of historical significance, anniversaries of founders, astronomical events, or symbolic equinoxes and solstices. The psychological effect. These codes aren't just for show. They create a layered sense of mystery and belonging. When an initiate learns that a number, a letter, or a symbol carries hidden meaning, it reinforces the feeling of being part of something ancient, powerful, and exclusive. Outsiders see randomness. Insiders see order, history, and destiny intertwined. In short, Skull and Bones uses numbers and letters as a secret language, a shorthand that ties members across generations. Every ring, every inscription, every ritual is part of a system that says, you belong, you understand, and you are bound.
Skull and Bones isn't just about rituals, symbols, and secrecy. It's a master class in psychology, a system designed to create lifelong loyalty and obedience in its members.
Confession as control. As we explored in Part 24, initiates confess their deepest secrets during ceremonies. By making members vulnerable and exposed, the society ensures that every bonesman has something to lose and something that can bind them to the group. This isn't casual hazing, it's deliberate psychological conditioning. Once someone shares a deeply personal secret, the society holds a metaphorical leash over them. Ritualized bonding. Repetition is key. Weekly meetings, seasonal ceremonies, and shared meals inside the tomb create habitual reinforcement. Initiates are repeatedly exposed to stress, uncertainty, and group pressure, which strengthens bonds with fellow members. Psychologists call this cohesive stress bonding, where shared challenge creates loyalty. Symbolic transformation. From titles like Knight of Eulogia to the Coffin ritual, initiates are repeatedly told that they have died and been reborn. This symbolic death breaks down the old identity, making the new identity, as a bonesman, more compelling and psychologically permanent. Exclusive knowledge. Knowledge is power. Bonesmen are taught secret histories, rituals, and codes that outsiders cannot access. This creates a dual reality. Members feel elite and empowered, outsiders feel irrelevant or inferior. This exclusivity encourages conformity and obedience because membership is tied to a sense of superiority and purpose. Fear of consequences. The stories of the Tomb of Silence, of social erasure, and even the legendary Geronimo skull serve as psychological deterrents. Members internalize the stakes of betrayal. Even unconfirmed legends create a sense that the society will enforce its will, subtly shaping behavior without overt coercion. Network pressure. Loyalty is reinforced long after graduation. Bonesmen who achieve positions of power support each other professionally and socially, while those who betray the society are often quietly cut off. This creates a lifetime of behavioral reinforcement, ensuring obedience through career and social incentives. The result? Skull and Bones doesn't just recruit elites, it molds them, creating men whose personal ambition, loyalty, and secrecy are intertwined with the society itself. By combining ritual, symbolism, social pressure, and psychological insight, the tomb produces generations of connected, obedient, and influential members.
One of the most persistent claims about Skull and Bones is its deep connection to U.S. intelligence agencies. From the CIA to covert Cold War operations, Bonesmen have allegedly played pivotal roles behind the scenes. 1. The CIA connection. George H.W. Bush, 48, is the most famous example. Before becoming president, he served as the Director of Central Intelligence, DCI, from 1976 to 1977. Other Bones alumni also reportedly held senior positions in the CIA and in related intelligence operations during the Cold War, using their Ivy League connections to gain rapid advancement. The Society's emphasis on secrecy, loyalty, and discreet handling of sensitive information made its members natural candidates for intelligence work. 2. Influence in covert operations. During the Cold War, some historians argue that Bones alumni were involved in covert operations abroad, ranging from diplomatic missions to clandestine funding of foreign political movements. The theory is that the tightly knit network allowed Bonesmen to coordinate activities without official oversight, leveraging private connections in finance, politics, and media. 3. Strategic appointments. The Society's alumni often occupy advisory or administrative roles in agencies such as the NSA, Department of Defense, and State Department, giving them indirect influence over intelligence policy and operations.
By placing trusted members in multiple layers of government, Skull and Bones could create a shadow network of influence, ensuring that secrets remained within a known circle. 4. Psychological advantage. The training inside the tomb, including confession, rituals, and secrecy, equips members to handle confidential information with absolute discretion. This psychological conditioning made Bonesmen particularly suited to high-stakes, high-pressure intelligence roles. 5. Controversy and speculation. Critics argue that Skull and Bones may have blurred the line between national service and private loyalty, raising ethical questions about power concentration. Skeptics point out that many of these connections are anecdotal, but the pattern, multiple alumni in intelligence, finance, and politics, is striking. In short, Skull and Bones isn't just a social club. Its members have infiltrated the highest levels of government secrecy, influencing intelligence operations, foreign policy, and international strategy, sometimes in ways the public never sees.
Skull and Bones is obsessed with death, not in a morbid way, but as a symbol of transformation, secrecy, and power. Beyond the coffin and the skull, other objects play a key role in the society's rituals. 1. Actual bones. True to the society's name, bones are a recurring motif. Some accounts claim small animal bones or replicas are used in ceremonies. Bones symbolize mortality and impermanence, reminding initiates that life is fleeting and loyalty to the order is eternal. In some rituals, initiates may handle, touch, or even arrange bones as part of symbolic acts of conquest over death. 2. Candles and light. Ceremonies often take place in dimly lit rooms, with candles as the primary light source. Candles represent knowledge, illumination, and transformation, casting shadows that reinforce the mysterious and otherworldly atmosphere. Placement, number, and color of candles are said to carry meaning, although the details remain closely guarded. 3. Coffin and casket. As discussed earlier, the coffin ritual is central. The coffin is a physical and psychological symbol of death and rebirth. Even outside initiation, symbolic caskets may appear in rituals commemorating past members or marking the passing of a class of seniors. 4. Robes, masks, and costumes. Masks and robes serve to anonymize participants, emphasizing the collective over the individual. Some masks may resemble skulls or other symbols of mortality, reinforcing the society's preoccupation with death. Costumes may also encode roles, Little Devil, Magog, Knight of Eulogia, allowing initiates to step fully into their archetypal identity. 5. Archival objects. Some stories suggest relics, artifacts, or historical objects are displayed or used symbolically, from old manuscripts to allegedly stolen artifacts. These items tie the present class to the past, creating continuity across generations. The psychological impact. Handling symbols of death in a controlled ritual environment produces a heightened sense of awe, fear, and connection. These objects, combined with secrecy and ritual, reinforce obedience, loyalty, and the internalization of the society's ideals. In essence, Skull and Bones uses objects to convert psychological symbolism into lived experience. Death becomes a teacher, a tool, and a binding agent, shaping initiates into lifelong adherence.
Skull and Bones doesn't just shape politicians and intelligence officers. Its alumni have quietly permeated the upper echelons of corporate America, creating a network of influence that spans banks, law firms, and multinational corporations. 1. Banking and finance. Bonesmen have historically held positions in Wall Street's most powerful banks, including Brown Brothers Harriman,
Goldman Sachs, and J.P. Morgan affiliates. The network allows alumni to share insider knowledge, facilitate deals, and support one another's ventures, often outside public view. Rumors of coordinated investments or subtle market influence feed the perception of a shadow financial network. 2. Law firms. Prominent law firms have long been staffed by Bones alumni. These connections create mutual trust and leverage, giving members access to confidential corporate deals and mergers. Alumni often act as legal advisors to fellow Bonesmen, ensuring that the society's influence extends not just socially, but legally. 3. Multinational corporations. Beyond finance and law, Bonesmen have led or advised major corporations in technology, energy, and media. Their shared background allows for networked influence across sectors, creating informal alliances and facilitating high-level cooperation. 4. Legacy and succession. Membership often runs in families. Sons and grandsons of Bones alumni are frequently groomed for leadership roles in corporate and financial institutions, perpetuating influence across generations. This continuity ensures that the society's reach doesn't diminish after graduation. Alumni maintain control and oversight of the next wave of elites. 5. Psychological and social advantages. Being a Bonesman signals trustworthiness, discretion, and competence to other alumni. Membership acts as a social credential, giving access to opportunities that may remain hidden to outsiders. In essence, Skull and Bones transforms elite education into elite influence. Alumni networks act as invisible scaffolding in corporate America, ensuring that power, wealth, and opportunity remain within a tightly knit circle.
No discussion of Skull and Bones would be complete without the strange, often creepy urban legends that surround the society. These stories blur fact and fiction, creating a mystique that has captivated Yale and the world for nearly 2 centuries. 1. Ghosts in the tomb. Students and staff have reported unexplained noises, shadows, and whispers near the tomb at night. Some claim to have seen apparitions of former Bonesmen or even a specter in a coffin wandering the chambers. While unverified, these stories reinforce the society's aura of the supernatural. 2. Ritual pranks. Initiates have allegedly been subjected to bizarre pranks, being buried temporarily in coffins, surrounded by eerie symbols, candles, and chanting, forced to perform strange dances or recitations. These pranks are said to break down fear and ego, preparing members for the psychological rigors of loyalty. 3. Alleged secret tunnels. Rumors persist of hidden tunnels beneath the tomb, possibly linking to other Yale buildings or even private homes. While no official evidence exists, the tunnels are said to be used for discreet entry, escape during ceremonies, or symbolic journeys representing passage from one world to another. 4. The Coffin Challenge legend. One story claims that initiates must endure extended periods inside a coffin, sometimes alone, to confront fear and mortality. While some say this is exaggerated, it mirrors the society's focus on death as a transformative tool. Cryptic messages and symbols. Symbols appear throughout campus, in brickwork, plaques, and hidden corners, supposedly left by Bonesmen for future initiates to decipher. These messages act as continuity markers, connecting generations and fueling curiosity among outsiders. 6. Alumni pranks on campus. Former members are rumored to return to play elaborate pranks, from subtle rearrangements of furniture to staged supernatural events, reinforcing the sense that Bonesmen are always present, even from afar. The psychological impact of these legends is powerful. Even if the events are exaggerated or invented, they create fear, fascination, and respect. The tomb becomes more than a building. It becomes a symbol of the unknowable, a place where the line between reality and myth blurs.
Skull and Bones' influence isn't limited to politics, finance, and intelligence. Its alumni have quietly left their mark on American media, publishing, and Hollywood, shaping narratives, culture, and public perception. Publishing and journalism. Bonesmen have historically held positions at influential newspapers and publishing houses, including the Yale Daily News, major magazines, and national newspapers. This allows them to guide stories, frame narratives, and shape public discourse, often subtly without drawing attention to their affiliation. Alumni connections can help promote certain authors, books, or ideas, ensuring the society's perspectives ripple outward into the broader culture. Hollywood connections. Rumors persist that Bonesmen have infiltrated Hollywood as producers, directors, or studio executives, influencing which stories get told and how. Allegedly, certain films and TV shows have embedded subtle references to skull and bones symbolism, numerology, or themes of secrecy and elite power. While much of this is speculative, insiders suggest that Bones' emphasis on storytelling, secrecy, and symbolism makes the society's members naturally suited to the entertainment industry. Shaping public perception. Beyond direct participation, the society's members may guide cultural trends, marketing strategies, or media campaigns, creating a feedback loop between elite networks and public consciousness. Their combined presence in journalism, publishing, and Hollywood allows them to subtly influence how the world interprets politics, history, and culture. Interestingly, the society's own mythology, ghosts, skulls, coffin rituals, has been amplified by media. Books, films, and documentaries about secret societies often reference skull and bones, intentionally or not. This creates a meta layer of influence, where the society's mystique spreads while remaining shrouded in secrecy. The result, a hidden cultural hand, guiding narratives from behind the scenes. Through media and Hollywood, Skull and Bones' ideals, fears, and symbols reach far beyond New Haven, subtly shaping the perceptions of millions.
Skull and Bones' influence extends beyond domestic politics. Alumni have long played key roles in shaping U.S. foreign policy, quietly impacting diplomacy, trade, and covert international operations. Diplomatic positions. Bonesmen have historically held positions in the State Department, embassies, and as special envoys. Their network allows them to coordinate policy behind the scenes, leveraging personal trust and shared secrets rather than formal bureaucracies. This creates an informal, highly efficient network of influence that can bypass traditional chains of command. Covert operations and intelligence overlap. Many alumni have served in intelligence roles, CIA, NSA, blending diplomacy and covert operations. The Society's emphasis on secrecy and loyalty makes its members ideal for sensitive international assignments, from negotiation to clandestine missions. Economic influence abroad. Bonesmen in banking and multinational corporations have shaped trade policies, investments, and international finance, often intersecting with U.S. foreign policy. Their dual roles in government and finance allow them to subtly coordinate decisions that affect global markets and geopolitical strategy. Continuity across generations. Skull and Bones emphasizes intergenerational influence. Senior alumni mentor younger members, ensuring that foreign policy influence remains constant and coordinated across decades. This continuity helps create long-term strategic advantage beyond the tenure of any single official or administration. Ethical and controversial dimensions. Critics argue that such concentrated influence can blur the line between public service and private loyalty,
raising questions about accountability. Supporters claim it ensures competent, discreet decision-making in high-stakes international situations. In essence, Skull and Bones operates as a hidden network within the American state, guiding decisions abroad through alumni loyalty, secrecy, and strategic placement, often shaping history without public acknowledgement.
One of the most mysterious aspects of Skull and Bones is its supposed archive, a hidden repository of letters, artifacts, and records documenting nearly 2 centuries of alumni, rituals, and influence. 1. Contents of the archives. The archives allegedly include letters and correspondence between Bones alumni, some of which involve politics, finance, or diplomacy. Ritual manuals describing ceremonies, symbolic meanings, and instructions for initiates. Artifacts ranging from old manuscripts to bones, ceremonial objects, and perhaps relics with historical or cultural significance. These items are said to be closely guarded, with access limited to senior members and carefully vetted alumni. 2. Purpose of the archives. Continuity, ensuring that records, rituals, and secrets are passed down accurately across generations. Power leverage. The archives may contain information that can be used to exert influence or protect members' interests. Historical record. The Society claims, in some accounts, to document the achievements and failures of its members as part of its collective memory. 3. Rumors and myths. Some speculate that the archives hold sensitive political or corporate information, potentially spanning decades of national and international influence. Other rumors suggest the presence of esoteric knowledge, including symbols, coded instructions, and historical secrets tied to the Society's philosophy. 4. The tomb as a library and vault. The tomb itself is said to double as both a ceremonial space and a secure archive. Every object, inscription, and book is carefully curated, blending symbolic significance with historical documentation. Senior Bonesmen act as guardians, controlling access and ensuring that knowledge remains within the Brotherhood. 5. Psychological impact of the archives. For initiates, knowing that such a repository exists reinforces loyalty, awe, and respect. It creates a sense of participating in a living history, with every member contributing to a legacy that stretches back to 1832. In short, the archives transform Skull and Bones from a student society into a repository of influence, memory, and power, ensuring that knowledge and secrecy persists across generations.
Becoming a Bonesman is not a single event. It's a carefully orchestrated journey designed to test loyalty, resilience, and psychological fortitude. The initiation unfolds in distinct stages, each with symbolic and practical purposes. 1. The Tap. The process begins with the Tap, a discreet selection ceremony where 15 seniors are chosen for membership. Members of the current class secretly identify candidates based on academic performance, social influence, athletic achievement, or leadership potential. The Tap is private, often taking place in a dimly lit room, with the identities of the tapped students initially concealed. 2. Preliminary orientation. Once tapped, initiates undergo a period of observation and subtle testing. They may be asked to perform small tasks or demonstrate discretion, loyalty, and composure under pressure. This stage builds anticipation, anxiety, and psychological readiness for the more intense rituals ahead. 3.
confession, and vulnerability. Initiates gradually enter the cycle of confession, revealing personal secrets to the group. The process occurs over multiple sessions, building trust while simultaneously creating bonds of obligation. Vulnerability is key. By exposing weaknesses, initiates are made to rely on the society and their fellow members. 4. Symbolic death and coffin ritual. The most dramatic stage involves the coffin ritual, where the initiate is temporarily placed in a coffin, sometimes blindfolded or restrained. This symbolic death represents the shedding of the old self. Upon emerging, the initiate is reborn as a knight of eulogia, fully embraced into the brotherhood. 5. Assignment of titles and roles. After the coffin ritual, initiates receive their secret titles, such as Magog, Little Devil, or Boaz. These roles are more than ceremonial. They define behavior, duties, and hierarchy within the society. 6. Integration and continuous testing. Even after formal initiation, new members continue to undergo subtle tests of loyalty and discretion. They may be tasked with maintaining secrecy, assisting senior alumni, or performing rituals that reinforce obedience. This ensures that membership is not just a status, but a lifelong commitment. 7. Graduation and alumni connection. The final step is graduation, where the initiate leaves Yale but remains an active member of the alumni network. The psychological and social conditioning of the initiation continues to influence behavior, relationships, and career paths long after college. The initiation is more than a ceremony. It's a carefully engineered psychological journey that transforms ordinary students into lifelong members of a secretive and influential brotherhood.
Skull and Bones' influence isn't just social or political. It extends deeply into finance. Alumni maintain a web of investments, foundations, and business ventures that reinforce the society's power and reach. 1. Banking influence. Many alumni have held executive roles in major banks like Brown Brothers Harriman, J.P. Morgan affiliates, and investment firms. Through these positions, they can coordinate capital flow, mergers, and investment strategies with trusted fellow Bonesmen, often outside public scrutiny. 2. Private foundations. Bonesmen have created private foundations and charitable organizations that allow them to funnel resources into causes aligned with their interests or to support fellow alumni ventures. These foundations also act as legal and financial shields, providing discretion while enabling influence in social, political, or global arenas. 4. Corporate boards. Alumni frequently serve on boards of multinational corporations, creating informal networks of influence across industries. Board positions allow Bonesmen to steer decisions, appoint allies, and coordinate strategies on a global scale. 5. Investment partnerships. Bonesmen often engage in co-investments, pooling resources and expertise. These partnerships ensure that profitable ventures remain within the network, reinforcing mutual benefit and loyalty. 6. Global reach. The Society's financial network is not limited to the U.S. Alumni are involved in international finance, trade deals, and cross-border investments. This allows Skull and Bones to exert economic influence subtly, shaping markets, industries, and even international policy. 7. Psychological and social advantage. Membership signals trust, discretion, and competence, attracting high-level financial opportunities. Bonesmen are often privileged to deals or ventures unavailable to outsiders, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of wealth, influence, and loyalty. In essence, Skull and Bones transforms social and educational prestige into economic power,
ensuring that its alumni have both the resources and networks to shape society long after graduation.
Skull and Bones' reach extends into the U.S. military, where alumni have held key positions in strategy, command, and defense policymaking. Their influence is subtle but pervasive, blending elite networks with operational authority. 1. High-ranking alumni. Bonesmen have served as generals, admirals, and strategic advisors, often in the Pentagon or at key military installations. Positions of authority allow them to shape doctrine, personnel decisions, and strategic priorities, ensuring influence over both domestic and international operations. 2. Strategic planning and policy. Alumni in defense roles often participate in national security councils, advisory boards, and military think tanks. This enables Skull and Bones members to indirectly shape war planning, intelligence analysis, and military resource allocation. 3. Network leverage. The Society's network allows Bonesmen to coordinate across civilian and military spheres. For instance, alumni in finance, politics, or intelligence can synchronize strategies with military leaders for shared objectives. This network amplifies the Society's influence, allowing it to operate across multiple domains of national power. 4. Recruitment and mentorship. Bonesmen often mentor younger officers, creating intergenerational influence. These relationships reinforce loyalty, discretion, and adherence to a shared elite worldview, effectively grooming future leaders aligned with the Society's ethos. 5. International operations and covert roles. Some alumni have been linked to covert military operations, both during the Cold War and in modern conflicts. While details are scarce, insiders suggest that loyalty to Skull and Bones can influence appointments, mission planning, and operational discretion. 6. Psychological and cultural impact. Membership conveys prestige and trustworthiness within military circles. Bonesmen are often assumed to be competent, discreet, and loyal, enhancing their ability to secure positions of influence. In summary, Skull and Bones extends its elite network into the military, ensuring that alumni can shape defense policy, strategy, and personnel in ways that reinforce the Society's long-term influence on national and global security.
Secrecy is the lifeblood of Skull and Bones. From the moment of initiation, members are bound by oaths, rituals, and psychological conditioning designed to ensure absolute confidentiality and unwavering allegiance. 1. The Binding Oath. Initiates are required to swear a solemn oath, often orally and sometimes symbolically written, pledging never to reveal Society secrets, loyalty to fellow members, commitment to uphold the Society's legacy. This oath creates both a moral and psychological obligation, reinforced by fear of social and professional consequences. 2. Ritual reinforcement. Every ceremony, from the tap to the coffin ritual, reaffirms the oath. Symbolic acts like handling skulls, standing in coffins, or performing assigned roles link secrecy to physical experience, embedding the principle deeply in the psyche. 3. Social and professional pressure. The Society leverages social networks, career influence, and alumni loyalty to enforce secrecy. Breaches are rarely public, but can result in social isolation, loss of professional opportunities, long-term reputational consequences within elite circles. 4. Psychological conditioning. Rituals are designed to instill both reverence and fear. Initiates learn that the Society's secrets are not just sensitive information, but symbols of trust, power, and legacy. This conditioning ensures that members internalize discretion as a core personal value. 5. Symbolic tools of secrecy.
Objects such as letters, inscriptions, coded symbols, and ceremonial artifacts remind members that secrecy is sacred. Numbers like 322 or ritual titles act as constant markers of allegiance, even long after graduation. 6. Continuity across generations. Alumni mentoring ensures that secrecy and loyalty are passed down, reinforcing the society's ethos over decades. Every new member inherits a culture where trust and confidentiality are paramount, creating a self-perpetuating system. In essence, Skull and Bones doesn't merely teach secrecy, it makes it a lived experience, intertwining ritual, psychology, and social enforcement to maintain control over knowledge, influence, and loyalty.
Skull and Bones alumni have long been linked to politics, not just as elected officials, but as strategists, advisors, and power brokers behind the scenes. The 20th century, with its wars, economic upheavals, and ideological battles, provided fertile ground for their influence. Election influence, Bonesmen often worked behind the scenes to support or oppose candidates, regardless of party affiliation. Their network allowed them to channel funds discreetly, arrange key endorsements, place loyal alumni in campaign or advisory positions. Famous examples include the connections surrounding George H.W. Bush, John Kerry, and other Ivy League elites, demonstrating influence across party lines. Policy manipulation. Alumni in government roles shaped economic, foreign, and domestic policies. Their positions in finance, law, and government allowed coordinated efforts to steer legislation, regulatory decisions, and trade agreements. International affairs. Bonesmen in diplomacy and intelligence influenced foreign policy and covert operations. Some operations, particularly during the Cold War, were allegedly guided by alumni networks, ensuring decisions remained within a trusted circle. Subtle coordination across generations. Political maneuvering often involved long-term planning, with older alumni mentoring younger members for future strategic positions. This intergenerational continuity allowed the society to maintain influence across multiple administrations, shaping political landscapes over decades. Ethical controversies. Critics argue that such concentrated power undermines democratic processes, creating a system where loyalty to Skull and Bones can outweigh accountability to the public. Supporters claim the network ensures competent, discreet leadership, especially in high-stakes political environments. Legacy and impact. By the late 20th century, the society had cemented a reputation for shaping American politics subtly but effectively, blending secrecy, loyalty, and strategic placement to guide outcomes without drawing attention. In essence, Skull and Bones transformed from a collegiate society into a shadow network, influencing the machinery of politics, manipulating elections, policies, and international affairs through carefully placed alumni.
Skull and Bones is often portrayed as a purely American institution, but evidence suggests that its alumni have cultivated connections with elite networks abroad. These relationships extend influence beyond the U.S., creating a global web of power. 1. European secret societies. Bonesmen are rumored to interact with ancient European societies, such as Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and aristocratic orders. These connections facilitate cultural exchange, financial partnerships, and shared influence, creating informal transatlantic alliances. Some speculate that Skull and Bones learned ritualistic and symbolic practices from European predecessors, adapting them to an American context. 2. International finance.
Alumni active in banking and multinational corporations often collaborate with foreign elites. These networks allow coordination of investments, trade deals, and economic strategies, subtly shaping global markets. 3. Political influence abroad. Through diplomacy, corporate positions, and intelligence, Bones alumni may indirectly affect foreign governments, policy decisions, or international negotiations. While hard evidence is scarce, patterns of alumni placement suggest strategic positioning in geopolitically significant regions. 4. Think tanks and NGOs. Bonesmen participate in international think tanks, foundations, and NGOs, often guiding policy and initiatives in education, defense, or economic development. These roles allow alumni to influence global agendas under the guise of research, philanthropy, or advocacy. 5. Symbolic and ritualistic influence. Some European alumni report shared symbolic practices, such as numerology, secret codes, or ceremonial rites, reinforcing a sense of belonging to a transnational elite network. These rituals help create trust and cohesion, enabling collaboration across borders. 6. Psychological and strategic advantage. By maintaining global contacts, Skull and Bones alumni gain early insight into international developments, positioning themselves advantageously for financial, political, or strategic operations. Membership signals credibility and reliability across continents, creating a subtle yet pervasive influence. In short, Skull and Bones functions as more than an American secret society. Its members are nodes in a global elite network, blending ritual, trust, and strategic placement to extend influence across finance, politics, and culture worldwide.
Despite secrecy, Skull and Bones has been linked to several scandals and controversies over the years. These incidents reveal both the society's reach and the risks inherent in maintaining such a tight-knit, powerful network. Number 1. Political scandals. Alumni in government have occasionally faced accusations of conflict of interest or undue influence. For example, some critics argue that decisions during campaigns or foreign policy were shaped more by alumni loyalty than public accountability. While rarely proven, the perception of influence has fueled conspiracy theories and media attention. Number 2. Leaks and exposures. A few former members have broken silence, revealing parts of initiation rituals, symbols, and alumni networks. Such disclosures often lead to public fascination and scrutiny, but the society is proven adept at managing fallout, relying on social and professional pressure to minimize reputational damage. Number 3. Financial controversies. Bones alumni in banking or corporate leadership have occasionally been implicated in controversial deals, mergers, or economic strategies. While direct evidence of society coordination is scarce, critics point to patterns of alumni collaboration as suggestive of network-driven advantage. Number 4. Alleged espionage or covert operations. Some alumni involved in intelligence or diplomacy have been accused of secretive actions or covert influence, particularly during the Cold War. These claims are often unverified, but they contribute to the society's aura of shadowy power. Number 5. Public perception and media attention. Media portrayals, from books to documentaries, have amplified the mystique and scandal associated with Skull and Bones. Urban legends, symbolic rituals, and high-profile alumni create a feedback loop where secrecy fuels speculation, which in turn reinforces the society's legendary status. Number 6. Lessons from controversy. These incidents highlight both the power and vulnerability of secret societies. Even a network built on secrecy and loyalty can face disruption when members act independently or when public scrutiny intensifies. In essence, scandals serve as a reminder that Skull and Bones' influence is potent but not invincible. The society thrives on discretion, yet the actions of a few can ripple across decades of secrecy.
Skull and Bones has left an outsized imprint on culture. Its rituals, secrecy, and elite mystique have inspired literature, movies, music, and a whole ecosystem of conspiracy theories. 1. Literature. Numerous authors have referenced Skull and Bones in novels and nonfiction, often portraying the society as a shadow government controlling politics, a mysterious brotherhood shaping destiny, a symbol of elite privilege and secrecy. Works like Fleshing Out the Bones, fictionalized accounts, and investigative journalism pieces have fueled public curiosity. 2. Film and television. Hollywood has used the society as a blueprint for secret organizations in films and TV series, sometimes including elite boarding school societies, hidden cabals influencing governments, mystical or ritualistic secret groups. Even when fictionalized, elements like the Coffin ritual, masks, and coded symbols often echo Bones traditions. 3. Music and pop culture. References in music, from lyrics to imagery, occasionally nod to secrecy, elite circles, or ritual symbolism reminiscent of Skull and Bones. The society's symbols, like the skull or the number 322, appear in album art, music videos, and stage performances, reinforcing its legendary aura. 4. Psychological and social influence. Beyond direct references, the society has shaped public imagination about elite privilege, secrecy as power, the allure of hidden knowledge. Its cultural footprint reinforces the mystique, ensuring that even outsiders are aware of its symbolic and aspirational significance. In short, Skull and Bones has transcended Yale, becoming a symbolic entity in global culture, inspiring stories, art, and myths about secrecy, elite influence, and hidden power.
Skull and Bones is not just a relic of the 19th or 20th centuries. Today, it continues to wield influence, adapt to modern challenges, and maintain its network of elites across politics, finance, and culture. 1. Contemporary alumni influence. Modern alumni occupy key roles in government, finance, media, and technology. They continue to use the network for career advancement, strategic partnerships, and discrete coordination across sectors. 2. Adaptation to technology. While the society is rooted in secrecy, it adapts to digital communication, encrypted correspondence, and modern networking methods. Rituals remain largely traditional, but alumni networks leverage technology for global coordination. 3. Continued cultural impact. References to Skull and Bones appear in popular culture, literature, and media, keeping the mystique alive. The society remains a symbol of elite power, secrecy, and influence, often used as a lens to understand modern conspiracy theories. 4. Political relevance. Alumni continue to hold positions in administrations, policy-making bodies, and intelligence agencies. The network ensures that the society's influence persists across party lines and generations, maintaining strategic relevance in governance. 5. Financial networks today. Bonesmen continue to occupy roles in banking, corporate boards, and international finance, often coordinating investments and ventures through alumni networks. Foundations and philanthropic initiatives provide a legal and strategic framework for influence while supporting global causes aligned with alumni interests. 6. Secrecy and ritual in the modern era. Despite transparency trends,
Skull and Bones maintains its rituals, oaths, and symbols, reinforcing continuity and psychological loyalty among members. Modern initiates still undergo symbolic transformation, confession, and loyalty tests, connecting past and present. 7. Global influence. Alumni networks extend influence internationally, connecting with foreign elites, financial institutions, and think tanks, ensuring Skull and Bones remains a globally relevant secret network. In essence, Skull and Bones continues to function as a living institution, blending tradition, secrecy, and modern strategy to maintain its influence across generations, sectors, and continents.
After nearly 2 centuries, Skull and Bones remains one of the world's most enigmatic organizations. Its legacy is not just in who belongs to it, but in what it represents: secrecy, loyalty, power, and the allure of hidden knowledge. 1. The enduring mystery. Despite decades of investigation, media coverage, and speculation, the society remains largely opaque. Its rituals, initiation ceremonies, and archives are carefully guarded, ensuring that much of its internal workings are known only to members. This secrecy fuels mythology, speculation, and fascination, making Skull and Bones a symbol of the unknown in American culture. 2. Historical legacy. From its founding in 1832, the society has influenced politics, intelligence, finance, and culture. Alumni like George H.W. Bush, John Kerry, and numerous Wall Street and military leaders demonstrate the society's persistent reach across sectors and generations. 3. Lessons in power and loyalty. Skull and Bones teaches that power is not just attained, but cultivated through networks, trust, and discretion. Loyalty and secrecy are not merely moral values, they are strategic tools that have enabled the society to endure and maintain influence for nearly 200 years. 4. Cultural and symbolic significance. The society's rituals, symbols, and mythology have permeated literature, film, music, and conspiracy culture, making it more than an organization, a cultural icon of elite influence. Even non-members are affected by its symbolic presence, shaping perceptions of power, privilege, and secrecy. 5. Modern relevance. Today, Skull and Bones continues to adapt, blending traditional rituals with modern global networking. It remains relevant in politics, finance, intelligence, and culture, demonstrating that secrecy and strategic relationships can transcend eras. 6. The fascination of the unknown. Perhaps the greatest legacy of Skull and Bones is its ability to captivate the imagination. By blending history, ritual, influence, and secrecy, it teaches that power is often exercised quietly, invisibly, and with subtlety. Conclusion. Skull and Bones endures as a living symbol of elite networks, secrecy, and influence, offering a lesson in how human ambition, loyalty, and ritual intersect to create lasting power. Its story reminds us that some of the most profound forces in history operate behind closed doors, shaping events in ways most people never see, yet feel the impact of every day.